What are you missing in the wintertime? Is that time out in nature, right?
Does not spark joy, get rid of it, kind of.
Recording this podcast, they're growing radishes.
Yeah.
And radishes can weigh up to 7 pounds.
Oh my...
Noche de los Rábanos.
Gnome in the home.
Yeah. Gnome in the home. Okay, we thought of it first.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Helpful Gardeners podcast. Well, if you're watching the podcast this week, you may notice a little something different. We're set up differently, aren't we today, Colin?
Oh, I thought you were talking about my coffee cup.
I know. Yeah. I know. We're kind of starting off this whole like festive feel in the greenhouse, and so why not kick it off with a festive coffee, right?
Festive
Cheers.
beverage. Cheers. But yeah, I came in. I got to say, I came in this morning, and I turned on the lights for the plants, and I was just like when you did it for autumn.
Yeah.
And we did that changeover. It's funny how much it changed my mood.
Mm-hmm. Like everything's so dark. And so when I usually come downstairs, I'm like, I have twinkle lights on now.
Okay, question for you. I know this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Real or artificial tree?
Oh, I had both growing up.
Oh, really? Okay.
So not like at the same time, but
No.
like, different year,
Yeah.
different thing. My dad at one point tried to grow our own Christmas tree in the front yard.
That's ambitious.
I mean, it got to like 3-4 feet tall. So didn't really realize how slow they grew. What about you?
Real all the way.
Yeah.
I like real. In England, we had artificial. I didn't really care too much as long as there were presents under it.
Yeah.
And then when we came to Canada, we got a real one back on the East Coast. It was beautiful. I've seen some tree, especially nowadays. If you ever gone to somebody's house and you can't tell if it's real or artificial because it's so well decorated and so well made. But the one thing that gets me for my own personal enjoyment is the fragrance.
I walked into the tree lot like this past week, and I remember thinking to myself, this is the symbol of the holiday season for me. Like, when you have a trigger?
Yep.
And it's like that little bit of nostalgia or whatever it is for you. That's what it is for me. It's like I think of that smell and I'm like, snap, I'm right there.
Smell will trigger memory more than anything else.
That's really cool. What would you say is your decorating style?
Minimalist.
Okay, so that's very, very interesting because I know I've seen some of your Christmas trees in the past, and like you get these cutesy little trees from like you'll go out to Kananaskis and like actually go and like cut down your tree, and you have the little baubles everywhere, and it's so cute. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum, like the trees that we have downstairs, which are equally pretty, but like so curated and like everything's so well put together.
That was my mom. My mom loved it. She'd run her ribbons and coil them, and I like the tree to be unique every year and not really have a pattern and play with it. For me, it's more about the decorating as an activity, not as an end goal.
Yeah.
So last year, it was myself, Jenny, Harry, Dominic, and Isabel, the kids, Harry's girlfriend and friend. We ordered food, we had some music, and we played some games, and we all decorated the tree, and it was no rhyme or reason. At one point, I wasn't even involved. I was just sitting back, and the 3 kids were decorating, and they were passing each other ornaments. And Izzy's smallest, so she was doing the bottom, and Dom's the tallest, and he was. And it was. I don't even care that I didn't put hands on my own tree. It was wonderful watching that and watching the kids enjoy it. So
especially as the kids get older too, right?
So for me, it's more. I'm not as interested in the end goal. You're gonna walk into somebody's house and critique their tree. Like, unless you're Martha Stewart, get out.
She would too.
I know. And if Martha does it, then I'd be like, okay, you can do it. Is Snoop with you?
I was thinking about it because I was doing a little bit of research, specifically ways that you can use, plants, live plants in your decor. I wanted to dive into some of the ways that other cultures and countries will utilize live plants to decorate.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because there was a keyword that came up for me when I was researching this, and it was Scandinavian. And I was like, what is Scandinavian? I had no idea. Do you know what that is?
If you asked me that, just kind of like Scandinavian, I would think very similar to us, like very similar style and pattern. I wouldn't.
Yeah. In Canada, it feels very American. Like it feels very like.
Sure. Okay.
I just mean like in a way of like a lot. You know, like everybody's different, and that's what's great. There's a lot of diversity when you're dealing with Christmas celebration and whatnot. But you know, it's always like, you know, a lot of ornaments on the tree typically, or you have a lot of inflatables on your yard, or you know, that kind of thing. Like
kind
a lot
of OTT.
Yes, exactly. Like we get into it. Like we're not go big or go home. But in Scandinavia, which is kind of those more northern European countries, it's more like your style, which is interesting that you said you're very minimalist, because that's sort of the Scandinavian lifestyle. So it's less is more. Simplicity, and also kind of dealing with more neutral colors. So like whites and tans and more woodsy, bringing the outdoors inside, right? I was reading this and I was like, well, this sounds like a Colin aesthetic.
Yeah, that's So one year, Jenny wanted to do a real nice aesthetic on the tree, and she really wanted to do kind of a woodland nature theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harry did not like that, not one bit. He was like, he was a little guy. He was incensed. So like, he'd grab the purple and hang it on, and Jenny was like, no, and I'm like, no, Harry, we're not putting them on. Next day we came down and all of the multicolored baubles were hung on the tree, and he'd waited until we'd gone to bed, snuck out.
He's like, I'm getting the last word.
He's like, I like the minimal. I like the idea, and I like the practice. It doesn't have to be grandiose to me. It's the sentiment behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you walk into an IKEA, I mean, they're everywhere now.
Yep.
You can pretty much see that because it's a Swedish company, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so you can kind of see that same sort of Scandinavian style, especially at Christmas time. You can see a lot more like natural wood products.
Okay, yeah.
There's a lot more emphasis on gathering, so like, you know, things like pine cones and sticks, and just like a few items that you can really make an impact with. Let's just set the mood a little bit. Wow. Okay. So imagine you're up in one of the countries in Scandinavia.
I'm picking Norway.
Sure. Say you're in Norway. Where did the Scandinavia minimalism really begin, right? And it really originated out of this need for like endurance and comfort. I mean, you think about the climate that's up in those countries, and it's quite harsh, right? So there's prolonged winters. There's a lot of, you know, you need to be able to withstand. So if you're putting anything outside, it needs to be able to withstand that sort of harsh, severe condition. This sounds very intense.
It is, yeah. I'm like, okay.
But there's this term, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, hygge.
And it's not spelled anything the way that you pronounced it.
I had to look up the pronunciation.
Hygge, I do know it. Isn't it kind of like that does not spark joy, get rid of it kind of thing?
I mean, maybe a branch of that, sure. I'll give you like half points.
Okay, I'll take half points.
So it's basically the concept of feeling comfort, pleasure, warmth, and coziness.
Okay.
Right? And so, you know, that completely instills like in the use of light, the use of cozy things, pillows, and, you know, just like the little comforts that...
See that? Yeah, exactly, because your decorations don't have to be inflatables, and they don't have to be... I think of a fireplace. I think of a mantle with stockings on it. I think of blankets, cozy fleece blankets on the couch. That to me is a Christmas aesthetic. It doesn't have to be trees and lights and 1,000 lights and lights outside and the lights changing colors. Like that, again, is a little over the top.
What are you missing in the wintertime is that time out in nature, right? And the smells that come with that. And we were just talking about that smell in Tree Lot and how it sort of triggers a different like mental reaction. So one of the things that they do is they love to bring real Christmas trees indoors. Artificial trees have kind of become more popular in the more recent years, of course. But used to always be real trees, live boughs and plants. So whatever they could get, and they would just bring them inside and decorate with them. So like wreaths and garland, and we'll get more into trends because a lot of this is sort of trending into, you know, what we're seeing this year, but that will be next week's episode. They're also doing dried oranges. Have you ever?
Yeah, I've absolutely heard of dried oranges.
I've always wanted to do it. I've never done it.
Yeah, I've heard of dried oranges. The one that actually, and you've probably heard of this one, when we came to Canada, the one that took me by surprise, and I had some friends who were doing it, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Stringing popcorn.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Okay, so coming from Europe, I'm like, what are you talking about? But come from Europe, dried oranges. Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to try that this year, actually. So maybe next week I'll bring in some dried oranges and we'll see if I actually succeeded. Also scavenging sticks and pine cones and berries, crafting with them, making things together. That's that quality time together, and then displaying it in the house. And also gnomes are a pretty important symbol at Christmas time.
Like garden gnomes, or is it a different type of gnome?
Yeah, they look just like garden gnomes. They originated out of Scandinavian folklore and were house gnomes who lived in or under your house.
Like Dobby?
No, cuter. Not saying Dobby's not cute, but like, you know, like the little typical gnome with the hat and the beard.
But Dobby was a house gnome.
He was a house elf.
Oh. Just delete that part.
Like Dobby.
Okay, so cuter and a different species altogether.
But they would protect the children and animals from evil or misfortune. Until recently, they've taken on a role similar to American Santa. In Norway, they call them nis. That would be like the same as our elf on the shelf.
Yeah.
Like you got to be nice to it.
Gnome in the home.
Yeah. Gnome in the home. We thought of it first.
Yeah. Right in here.
Okay, but that was Scandinavian. Now,
one thing I want to touch on there, because I have seen this and I didn't know it was a Scandinavian thing. And I've seen this. So wreaths here, they're all boughs and green and thick. Sometimes the hole in the middle is this big, but the wreath is this big. But I really like the ones that have a lot of bare stems. And pine cones on them, and maybe a little bit of green, maybe that accent of it. And that was kind of an aesthetic you were saying there, and I was like, I like that.
I really like it too. I think Emily and I were downstairs and we were looking and admiring the grapevine wreaths.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, love that. Just like that simple and naturalistic approach.
Yep.
Such a fan.
Less is more.
Less is more. Okay, so that was the Scandinavian decor. And obviously, you know, everybody's different. Not saying that everybody in Scandinavia does it this way.
Guaranteed some people have got colorful lights and an inflatable.
Exactly, right? I just feel like it's... And to say also like, you know, Christmas in Northern Europe, I hear, is just incredible. From Christmas markets to festivals to lights to everything. Like it's really neat and something that I would love to experience one day. Now we're going to move on to case study number 2.
Where are we going now?
The complete 180 opposite of what we just said.
Yeah, the music totally it went from being like ethereal, I know, to being like...
Yes, exactly. So now we're going to go to a place called Oaxaca.
Oaxaca, okay.
Yes.
I've got a feeling it is not spelled anything like it sounds.
Not at all.
Okay.
No, the first time I heard about Oaxaca was actually in a food show on Netflix called Somebody Feed Phil. And he went to Oaxaca and he just got immersed. I'm such a foodie, so Oaxaca has an incredible food scene.
Okay.
From mole to mezcal. Apparently, Oaxaca State produces 90% of the Mexican mezcal, which is made of agave. Our friend Alfredo was just telling us that in Mexico City, there's this restaurant, Michelin Star.
Yeah.
And they sell mole that was how old?
He said... Well, we read it, 3,559 days.
Yeah, like incredible.
Holy moly.
Nice.
I was sitting on that one for a bit.
Did you know, though, that Oaxaca also has a botanical garden? 5 acres of succulents. 900 different types of succulents.
And I imagine some of them are like as big as my head.
Incredible. They have organ pipe cactus, and it's like a total maze that you walk through.
Isn't that great? We were talking about mazes. We never thought about like a cactus maze.
Yeah, well, who thought there would be a cactus maze? And then they have this really cool thing called Hierve el Agua.
Hierve el Agua. I just butchered that.
So it's an infinity pool of natural spring water at the top of a cliff in the mountains just south of Oaxaca. It features mineral-rich waters that flow from the pool and down the side of the mountain. Why don't more people travel there? Like, it looks incredible.
Well, you're just like, okay, add that to the bucket list.
But here's the thing. One of the big tourist draws to Oaxaca is Christmas, which floored me. Like, I was on the tourism website and it was like, Christmas in Oaxaca. And I was like, what? Okay, tell me more. And of course, poinsettias are native to Mexico. So they have poinsettias everywhere.
And I imagine they're huge.
Yeah. It's like incredible huge. One of the cool things that I found out, and getting back to decorating with plants for the holidays, they have what's called Noche de los Rábanos.
Noche de los Rábanos. Night of the Ribena.
Close.
Oh, really?
Night of the Rabbit. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I want to be part of that.
Talking plants.
Yeah.
Night of the Radishes.
Rabanos is radish?
Yes.
Okay, it's not a far leap, but I wouldn't have gone. Night of the Radishes.
Night of the Radishes. Okay, so this place takes place on December 23rd every year, and it's only specific to Oaxaca. It was created in 1897. The mayor had deemed it like, this will be a thing from here on out. So it's over 100 years old. Essentially, the legend goes that one year the Oaxaca radish crop was so abundant that some radishes were forgotten. So when the radishes were dug up months later, they were super large and they resembled various figures. They were brought to the Christmas Eve market in Oaxaca, where they were carved to draw attention to the vegetable stands. And then they just deemed an annual radish festival.
Carved like pumpkin, like jack-o'-lantern?
Like a little bit. Like, not like carved inside, but like they would be creating
like
shapes
whittles,
with it.
like
have you ever been to, say, like a trade show and then you see that one stand where they take vegetables and they like make things with it?
Nope, but I'm fascinated now. I'm like...
They'll like turn like a watermelon into a flower or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah. I know. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so they'll do something like that. And so it looks very similar. And I'll show you a picture in a second. Like various carving techniques, and they make huge sculptures. So mythical creatures, biblical scenes, depictions of Oaxacan life.
How big are the radishes?
Like huge. So here's the deal. So
I
I'll
was
show
thinking,
you.
Just in my head, while you're getting that image, when maybe they hung them up because they're red, the top of a radish is green, and they're shaped like a light.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So would it kind of be like a decoration? And that was where my brain was going. I wasn't thinking that they were big enough that you could carve them into mythical figures.
Remember when we were talking about large vegetables a few weeks back?
Yeah. Noche de los Rábanos.
Yes, there you go.
Never made it. Wow.
So here is an example of one. So, for example, this one, it depicts a horse, and they've got people riding it. I assume they look like kings because they've got little crowns on their heads, and they're riding the horses. It almost reminded me of like the Lord of the Rings in Rohan or something like that.
Yep, I can 100% see that.
Yeah, so let me just see here if I can just find
So they
another.
use multiple radishes and sculpt them all together, and that is absolutely fun.
So like this one's a dragon.
Oh my God.
This one's a mariachi band.
That was great.
Like they create some
God,
incredible.
Look at the turkey. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's really quite neat what they end up doing. They can even make people. What happens is the government of Oaxaca plants the radishes used specifically for this festival in a designated field near the airport. So it's a spot that's not being used, and it's out of fairness for all competitors. So it's not like, say, you know, how we have the largest vegetable, like we grow them on our yard and it's, you know, we get to control it kind of thing. Because then you would probably put structures under the ground and try to manipulate some of the radishes, right? So they just say, out of fairness for everybody, we're going to plant all of the radishes, and then we're going to give you each a plot. They're also planted in various intervals over the course of 3 months leading up to a few days before the competition. And then all the entrants will go into the field to dig up their giant radishes. So, some of the radishes can weigh up to 7 pounds.
Oh my...
Yep, and these radishes are not edible because they do use chemicals during the growing process to make them larger.
Just to get them as big as possible. Fair?
Yes.
I think the main takeaway we should be looking at here is that they're still gardening in December.
I know.
Slightly better.
I know. So basically, right now, as we're recording this podcast, they're growing radishes.
Yeah.
And then in about a month, they'll harvest them for the Night of the Radishes.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Guess how much the winner gets? So there's like a competition, and they get like essentially judged for this competition.
And it's judged based on like the intricacy of your sculpture or the
originality, maybe.
$1,000.
Yeah, close to 1,500 US, so 30,000 pesos.
You know, the other thing is too, actually saying that aloud now. You have a very small window to get those radishes out the ground and carved.
Yeah.
So they must be planning it, and what a great artistic step. Because one thing I love really about most tropical places, now that I think about it, the capricious use of color. They don't care and nothing clashes. It works. If you decorated the outside of your house here, like they do in Mexico, everybody would be like, oh, you have no time. But you go to Mexico and you're like, I am in love with that home. I want that house.
100%. Yeah, and that was one of the things that a lot of people in Oaxaca really pride themselves over is how much color and diversity there is everywhere. Because I feel like it's got to be hard being in Oaxaca. And yes, you have your strengths, right? And it's kind of like being in Canada where, you know, each province has their strengths and they kind of want to be like the star of the show, a star of the country.
Yeah.
But it's really hard because Mexico City has a lot going on. They've got, what was it, the Day of the Dead.
Yep.
They got like numerous festivals throughout the year that draw lots of crowds. To Oaxaca, while it's this food capital, you know, it kind of has this really cool event and Christmas celebration that happens, and they use plants and food to draw people in and to celebrate their culture. And I just think it's great. And I love that everybody is celebrating the holiday season in a different way. But at the root of it all, there's still a whole lot of love there. And it's, you could be Scandinavian and you can celebrate with a more natural approach and really going out into your community safely, obviously, and harvesting things that will bring that outdoor feeling indoors for you during that cold and sometimes harsh Canadian winter. But then there's the other side of it. And I know a lot of people who will go and travel for Christmas in the holiday season. And maybe they will go out and visit places like Oaxaca where they are still growing radishes, or where they have beautiful big poinsettias and poinsettia trees that they can go and admire. So depending on what you're into, you can be either minimalistic like Colin, or you can be like grandiose like the people of Oaxaca.
Yep. I don't know if I lean more to the Scandinavian style or whatnot, but it's, so I have very good friends who moved to Australia, and I was talking to them one time, and Christmas Day, my friend Simon took the kids to the beach because it was 36 degrees. They had their Christmas lunch on the beach. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. And it was one of those times where it was like the exact opposite here, like minus 36, blowing a gale, blizzard. And I was like, that must be amazing. And he's like, it is. But he's like, it kind of doesn't feel like Christmas. He's like, we know it's Christmas and there's decorations. And he's like, but it doesn't feel like Christmas. He's like, it feels like summer. Yeah. And he's like, it loses a part of it. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, like to see that difference.
Well, I would be curious if we were to talk to, say, our friend Eduardo, who is from Brazil, right? Yep. And they must go through the same thing, being on the Southern Hemisphere. I wonder how they felt when Christmas came around.
Yeah, and I mean, he's born there, so for him, Christmas is warm, and that is what you're used to. Because I'm sure, like, native Australians are like, yeah, this is Christmas, mate. You know, and Simon's like, oh, no, I'm from England. Like, it should be raining and black and dark. But it's sunny and long days. And I wonder, because, you know, when you see Christmas in the most part, in the media, let's say, and I'm sure it's different in different places around the world, but even Christmas movies. I've never seen a Christmas movie based on a Christmas story in Australia or Brazil or Mexico.
That's true. I think I've only seen like maybe one, maybe two, but you're right. That perspective is very like, it feels like Christmas when it's cold and you're in the Northern Hemisphere and
snow and jingle bells and that
cuddle season.
Yeah, that is great. Look at every single, I mean, I've never actually watched one, but every single Hallmark movie. Yeah. Sweaters, decor, green, red, you know, lights, like that is the, for want of a better word, I'm certainly not offending anybody, but that is the traditional Christmas. But it's not. It's not. If you're from Australia, Mexico, Brazil, you have a very different tradition and it's awesome too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure like, you know, people maybe in Australia, maybe they decorate with plants in a different way too. You know, I think when I was doing a brief research on Australia itself, I was noticing that there was still, and I'm not sure if your friend has seen this, but they still make wreaths, but it's not out of like fur. It's like out of whatever you would find in Australia at the time, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So maybe that's also something to explore as well. It's like, what do you have available to you? And maybe what is the spirit of the holidays? Like, are you looking to gather those sort of like natural elements together, or celebrate your culture, or like what is it about the holiday season that you want to inspire in your home?
Yeah,
Very
and that's what it's
interesting.
about. And like everything, like we always say, there's no right or wrong answer.
No.
No such thing as one size fits all.
No, exactly. Well, that wraps us up for this week.
Oh, that was so much fun. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you. Did we surprise you? Are you gonna have like your own radish decor in your house? If you do, let us know. We are on Instagram at Helpful Gardeners Pod. Go and give us a follow. And if you're listening on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts, make sure to give us a follow and let us know what you'd love to hear more about. I know we're heading into the festive season, so maybe there's something that you've always had a burning question for that we can help you explore. Send us to your friends, learn along with us. We explore new topics every week. Now that we're heading into the festive season, there's gonna be a lot of festive content coming up. So we hope that you'll join us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye. Everyone.